everybody, and welcome to another episode of the OutMarket.Pro podcast. I'm Mark Stein. In this episode, join me for a deep dive into business credit, cash flow management, and business valuations with my guests Vaughn and Shawn from J.Galt Finance. Finance Suite, guys, is that it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So with over 15 years of experience in the business asset protection industry, Jerry is a seasoned professional who now serves as president of J.Galt, where he helps business owners address critical cash flow issues. Shawn acts as a regional managing partner for J.Galt, where he's passionate about small business owners and helping them address their financial issues. Welcome to the OutMarket.Pro podcast, Jerry and Shawn.
Hey, thanks for having us, Mark. We appreciate you getting us in front of your audience to clear up some of those mystifications.
Thank you, Mark. Very happy to be here.
All right. So let's jump right in with a definition, or not definition, but to cover the scope of what you do, because I'm sure a lot of people, even locally, and you guys are headquartered in Louisville, Kentucky, correct? Or are you outside of Louisville?
Technically, our headquarters is in Alpharetta, Georgia. As of right now, Jerry is in Indianapolis, Indiana, and I am in Louisville, Kentucky, Mark. So we're spread out all over the country. We can help out anyone in the U.S. of A.
Got it. Okay, so one of you give me a summary of what you do.
Well, at J.Galt, what we do is we're here to really we're empower small and medium-sized business owners to fuel the dreams of their company by understanding cash flow and getting access to it without personal guarantees and utilizing their personal credit scores and the time in business and the profitability of it. And it's all done through building true credit on their employer identification number, that tax number they got through the IRS. So that EIN number is really the social security number of the business. So you don't have to do the traditional sign-offs and co-signing for your company. So we're really here to help them out with understanding their cash flow, getting access to it at the best rates and terms, and then really getting the facts to understand where to spend their time, money, and resource so they can plan for their exit strategy. And then obviously, more importantly, ensure the valuable asset that they're building.
And I think there's a lot of misunderstanding out there about what's needed in order to get credit just through your company. And I think many people end up signing their personal guarantee when they didn't think that they would have to do that. They sort of get backed into it. Talk a little bit about that dilemma and the lack of knowledge, really, about that whole situation.
Absolutely, Mark. That's a great question because, just myself having 5 companies, when you decide to start a corporation, you get that corporate shield, that corporate veil, right? And you're a limited liability corporation, and they told you that, hey, if you get sued, they won't come after my personal assets, they come after the business assets, and I could get all the funding to run my company, right? And the first part is true, as long as you're ethical. But then the second part, when you go to deposit money in your brick and mortar banks and you try to get money, well, your company looks like a child, like you did when you came out of high school when you were 18, right? This is because I didn't have bad credit on my SSN. I just didn't have any credit yet. So how do you build it? It's truly about connecting with lenders and vendors that report to the business credit bureaus. And if you're not familiar with that, most of you may be familiar with personal credit, which is what? TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax. We're not talking about that. That's on your SSN. We got to focus on that EIN, that employer identification number. And you've got Dun & Bradstreet. You've got Experian and Equifax Business and CreditSafe. Those are the business credit bureaus, but you've got to get that EIN of yours fundable so you look like a corporation so you can get access to all the ready access capital and credit like Wall Street companies. So it's an art, it's easy to do, but there's not a lot of technical terms. Your local banks, your your CFOs, your business advisors, your CPAs, your accounting firms, and those guys, that's not really what they do. They're great at what they do, but who's helping the small business owner? Because Wall Street has high-powered bankers, they got CFOs, they've got people to really help them get in there, and they've got Dun & Bradstreet that they pay to help them do that. But how does the small business owner do that? That's where J.Galt comes into play to really provide education, and the tool is really to fuel that EIN so they can get access to capital on their company without the owner co-signing for it.
And I bet a lot of small business owners end up signing, putting their social on that application, and they are oblivious to the fact that they are now personally liable for that loan. Do you hear those stories all the time?
All the time, including myself, right? 5 companies. I had business credit cards that I thought were on my business. They are. It's got my name on my business on it, but I'm personally guaranteeing it's reporting to the personal credit bureaus. Even though it says business card, it does help keep my business expenses separated from my personal life, but those are really on me. So my credit score was on a roller coaster, ebb and flows, up and down, right? And so, because I was using over 51% and higher of my balance, and when you do that, that wrecks the owner's credit score, right? So there's a better way. You got to get that SSN out of your business, get your personal guarantees, and we don't want to leverage our homes and all of our personal assets into our company. So we really need to separate those, and that's what we really educate and show the business owners how to do.
And I want to go through some of the steps in doing that, but before I do, let me ask this. If you have signed on to a line of credit or a business loan, and you've given your social and put your personal guarantee in that, is there any way that you can get out from under that, the personal guarantee, after the fact?
Absolutely. Great question. So when you have it all personally guaranteed, there's lots of loans and things that you're going to get on that. But once you build your business credit score with like Dun & Bradstreet to an 80+ credit score, then you can actually refinance and put that money now on your company through corporate credit cards, not business credit cards. Corporate lines of credit, not and transfer those personal line of credits. You can take the vehicles or the equipment that you purchase on yourself personally, and then put that on equipment and vehicle loans through the corporate lending and banking without personal guarantee. So now it removes it from the owner. So the owner now has what? Washed their hands with the debt. Now it's on the company. So it stands alone. I always say there's 2 uncles in your business. Uncle Sam, which I can't help you with. That's the IRS, right? That you pay taxes to. Then Uncle Ian. So if you get it, little play on the words, EIN, I pronounce it Ian, that employer identification number. And Uncle Ian, you just got to get him fundable. You got to get him where he's recognizable, so corporate lenders and vendors will give your company access to funding on its company legs, not with the owner.
And I'm guessing that the terms, the interest rate, all of that would be better with as long as your credit score has been established on the company side, then your terms are likely to be better than you got from a personal loan. First of all, is that true?
That's 100% true. So you're going to get better, you're going to get the bank's money, a lot better rates in terms on a company, and you're going to get over 10 times the amount of money and capital on your company than you'll ever get personally through revenue and traditional financing methodologies like most business owners do today, including myself, right?
Well, then the second part of the question is, would the banks balk at giving you more favorable terms, or do they pretty much have to give you the better terms if you qualify for the business loan as opposed to the personal?
And that's a tricky question because there's a lot of brick and mortar banks, like the big banks that serve the world business, right? Like the Wall Street companies, like the Googles and the Apples of the world. So the bigger banks, they're never going to look at the EIN. They're always going to ask for personal guarantees, but you'll still get better rates and terms. If they look at your EIN credit score, your company's credit score, and it's got an 80+ score on it, then you can unlock corporate rates and terms, even though it's personally guaranteed. But there's a lot of money available, but it's not the traditional. It's the non-traditional funding that you can get on your company through lines of credit, and those corporate credit cards will allow you to get better rates in terms, like on a corporate card, you can get actually a 0% rate for 12 to 18 months. Not just on the balance transfer if you need the cash, right? It's not free money, you got to pay it back, but you can use the money at no interest rate, which is pretty powerful for a lot of businesses that are using a lot of capital.
Yeah. Let me restate it a little bit. And that is, let's say I've got a line of credit from Wells Fargo, which I do.
Yep.
And I want to roll that into my business. And let's say I'm carrying a balance,
Yep.
which I'm not, but let's say I am on it. Then my banker does not have a real incentive to roll me into the business line because he's going to get lower rate, probably better terms. I may still have to pay something, not for a line of credit. But anyway, there's a disincentive there to give me a better rate and a better deal. Do they have to do it? Or is it within their discretion and they can do it if they will, because I've got the corporate line of credit? I mean, I've got the corporate approval.
That makes more sense. So you currently have a line of credit. It's at a higher interest rate. Let's say it's at a 10% rate. I can transfer it over to a different bank that doesn't have a personal guarantee that'll give me a 3 to 5% rate, but then I would just pay off the Wells Fargo loan and put it on the other bank that does it on your EIN. A lot of the big banks will not, because that's just not what they do. So you have to know which financial institutions will actually do that on your EIN and give you those corporate rates and terms. And that's what our SaaS product gives to the business owner. So
Okay.
you know for sure who's doing that without what? Hope and pray and trial and error.
Okay. I guess you could, if you've got a good relationship with your banker and they want to keep your business, you could go to your existing banker and say, hey, Chase is going to give me 5%, roll this over. Do you want to keep it? Then you got to match it.
There you go.
Or you're going to lose my business. Not just this loan, but you're going to lose my business, period.
That's right, Mark. You could do that. But I think you'll find a lot of times they won't, or they'll have to do a whole new loan on your corporation, because typically the line of credit you have now is on you personally. That's it's just a business loan on you personally. So you'll just refinance it to the corporate rate, and then they would have to give it to you at that rate. They wouldn't just lower the rate you have on the personal loan, even though it says business. They would put it over on a corporate loan to on your EIN.
Okay. What are some of the other issues that you work with clients on? I heard you talk about cash flow management. Just talk about some of the other services that you guys provide that we haven't talked about, other than this difference in the rates of corporate versus personal guarantees.
Absolutely. We work on cash flow management because that's the number one reason why 82% of small businesses close their doors in 10 years or less. It's not because necessarily funding. Now, bad loans, high interest rates can actually deplete the cash flow of a company. So they need to understand the process of debt and what it costs you, because a true 10% loan is amortized. That's not what you're paying. You're paying a lot higher on those payments. So understanding that, but our cash flow management tool allows them to put their expenses in. So it's not a replacement of like a QuickBooks or a profit loss statement. Those are expense trackers looking at the past. It's like you managing your business looking through the rearview mirror. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Our cash flow management tool is like looking out the front windshield of the business. So you know all the money coming in the front door of your business, what's going out the windows and the back door, so you understand cash flow. Because cash flow is why they fail, right? So I can get you all the cash flow that you want, but if you don't understand the capacity and the cash flow to run your business, and a lot of owners, Mark, think that cash flow is the revenue of a company. You can have a company that's 200. I just talked to one a month ago that does 212 million a year, and they're negative $263,000 on cash flow, right? Monthly. So revenue is not your cash flow. So what we do is we have a certified finance analyst that sits down with them, goes through their expenses so they understand that, and then they build maps. So when you add people, vehicles, equipment, you want to go to a bigger building. Hey, how's that going to affect my cash flow? Because we don't want to be making 100,000 a month and then do some things where it reduces our cash flow by 50%, hopes and dreams one day we get that cash flow, because when you reduce your cash flow, it's taking money from the owner's pocket. So there's reinvestment costs and variable expenses that our cash flow management tool allows most business owners that didn't see it before, because they're just used to what? Tracking expenses and looking at, QuickBooks or where they finish. By the time you see that, you're asking where your money went. This is more of a proactive way to do it. It's not a cash flow forecast, because that's different. Cash flow management is really understanding the details of the cash flow needs of your company. And as you make changes, or you're looking to make, whether they're growing or reducing, how does that play into my company, and how's that going to affect my cash flow? And that's where we come in, and that's really where cash flow experts, we can get you access to it, but you got to understand it, because if you don't, getting capital doesn't really make sense.
Mm-hmm. And I would imagine a lot of this variation is due to the seasonal nature of some people's businesses. And it's not necessarily ice cream in the summertime. It's that certain expenses will go up and or certain your income, your revenue varies. So you got to
It
keep that
does.
in line.
Economy can play a factor in your business, right? Seasonality, timing. Summer months affect some businesses, some they don't. Winter months affect some. So planning and understanding when your company has more revenue or less revenue, so you spend and invest properly, that's all part of proper cash flow management. And that's where our software and our analysts really help the business owner. We're not here to replace the accountant and the CPA, but we're here to make sure they understand it. Because when you understand it, you can communicate it and you can tack left and right and plan for those slower months, dry months, and then obviously prepare for the storm that all business owners face. It's never this way. We all go this way for a amount of time. There's also, the ebbs and flows of a business is very common on an annual or, a 10-year basis. So allowing you to plan for it, knowing where those things come up is very powerful in the sustainability and the success of a thriving business compared to a surviving business.
Mm-hmm. A lot of times there are external conditions that will come to play and surprise people. And the situation that comes to mind, the first for me, is the state of commercial real estate. Look at the interest rates that they were paying, near zero, 1%, 2%, and then boom, with post-COVID, the rates jump up. So, and I'd be curious to know if you deal with some of those clients, some of those types of clients, and that's the potential risk to the economy, to the general economy that I see out there, and especially to banking, who's been holding on to a lot of these and giving some grace periods for repayment. What are your thoughts about that? And who would have thought, well, no, that's not true. If you're a business getting 0, 1% money, you've got to know, unless you're 18 years old, you've got to know that at some point it's going to go back up. And if you're old enough, if you're as old as I am, you remember 18% mortgage rates. So you got to know that that things are going to change. Talk about that commercial lending crisis that I think we've been pushing back a little bit. Probably we'll be able to push it back beyond the election, but talk about some lessons around that situation.
That's a great question, because economy and what goes on just in the banking industry, like right now, it's very fluid. Interest rates are rising. But to your point, back in the 1980s, mortgage rates were 13 to 18%. But you also got 18% in a bank savings account, right? Back in the 80s. That's when the 401ks and IRAs came out. Well, it was smart because you were paying 50 to 70% in income tax. People are like, no, I didn't. I'm like, yeah, you did. You just were probably a kid and don't remember, because we haven't lived through that. So when you look at the generational business owners and the landscape of finances, I've seen business owners that had credit cards, business credit cards and lines of credit. And then when the 2008 hit, they cut them off. They had 150,000 and said, it's gone, right? Because the housing market bubble busted. Their credit cards, not giving them out anymore. You can't get them. Or, hey, you had 50,000, but now you only have 10. They'll reduce the limits. Well, can you imagine being a business owner relying on that type of credit and cash flow? And then because of something that happens in the Federal Reserve banking industry and with our government printing money all the time, they get overextended. So what do? They reduce it. And that's all because of the traditional methodology of the commercial lending. It depends on what happens in the housing market with the economy, inflation, and that all regulates it. It's all done on purpose to control the spending and reduce it. But when you get it on your EIN, your corporation, Walmart doesn't get a decrease in their corporate power. They still are able to fund that, but they're doing that on the company, because companies can be over debt to income, they can be over on utilization because companies need more money. So as long as you're paying your bills on time on your EIN, you can get more and more money, even though if you're overextended. So that's what the power of corporate credit gets you, that true EIN business credit, where when you use the traditional methods on revenue and your personal social security and how long you've been in business, there's a lot of factors in the banking industry and the economy that can play into that to do what? Take the rug out from underneath the business. And then what are you going to do then? That's another reason why I've seen some businesses close, because it wasn't that they were doing anything wrong. They just got their lines of credit, or they couldn't get the capital because of the situation, to your point, with whether it was a housing market, the bubble of our economy, inflation, whatever it is, that all plays factor in our rates, like you've seen, right? If we all had 18% bank savings account, would you have to invest it anywhere else? You wouldn't have to, would you? Be a pretty good return. We'd all sign up for that all day long. So it's just, we've seen those things happen over the past 100 years, and they do repeat themselves. But preparation to building true business credit on your company, that's going to help you extend and survive those storms and those different things that we can't see, because I don't have a crystal ball. Do you, Mark?
Nope.
I have no idea what tomorrow holds, but if I can prepare and keep my assets out of the game of running my company, it's no different. Think about, think about Donald Trump, right? It's not a political statement. He built a casino in Atlantic City and spent $3 billion to get that rolling. After 2 years, what did he do? Closed it. Do you think his personal credit score was affected when he did that? Did he have to sell any of his personal assets and his business assets to pay off those loans? No. 2 weeks later, he went down to Doral, Florida, and did what? He bought a golf and resort place in Florida, Doral, Florida. So that's what I don't want you to build corporate credit in case, so you can just close it if you don't run it. But if something would happen, wouldn't it be nice not to affect you, so you could move forward and do something different? And he's a real estate mogul, and that's how he's able to do it, because he has the empowerment of corporate credit behind him. And that's what the small and medium-sized business owner can have the same tool and empowerment to do, to cash flow like those guys do.
Mm-hmm. Let's bring Shawn into this a little bit. And Shawn, you've just recently joined J.Galt. So talk a little bit, share your background a little bit, and what drew you to the company.
Thanks, Mark. Originally, I'm from Detroit, Michigan. I joined the Marine Corps when I was 20 years old. I always had a desire to want to serve my country, especially post 9/11. Still remember exactly where I was at that moment in time. Been 20 years in the Marine Corps. Very, very recently retired. 16 of those years were on recruiting duty. I am married with 3 daughters, 19, 17, and 12. My oldest is actually a freshman at the University of Kentucky, the Wildcat. I knew I wanted to retire, but I wasn't quite sure exactly what I wanted to do. So I began to get my resume together. And I'm scrolling through LinkedIn, and I happen to start getting flagged by J.Galt. And it kept coming up as I would be a top applicant. I would be a top applicant for J.Galt. So it was an easy apply, and I read the description, and it was honestly kind of vague, but it was appealing to me. So it said something about leadership and developing others, which is kind of what I'm known for. So I was like, yeah, I'll drop the easy apply, no big deal. I got a reply back 2 days later. They wanted me to interview with the CEO. I thought that was kind of strange, right from the very beginning. You want me to interview with the top man, but at the same time, I was like, wow, well, this is obviously a pretty personal company. And before I scheduled that link with the CEO, Cole Lyon, I had to watch an hour video. And I still remember watching that video. That video was very, very descriptive. It went into great detail about what we do at J.Galt, why Cole and Jerry bought the company, some reasons behind it, and the mission that we're on to help save small businesnesses. And it really resonated with me, Mark. And the reason being is my wife and I had a boutique in Shelbyville, Kentucky. Always, as long as I've been with my wife, she wanted a retail boutique. Don't ask me why. That's just what she wanted. She's got a degree in biology from Ohio State, but she wanted a retail boutique. And her dreams came true. In October of 2017, we bought a store called Tipsy Gypsy in downtown Shelbyville. We rebranded it to 828, moved across the street to a little smaller building, and we were doing really, really well. And then, that little thing called COVID hit, and it destroyed us. We mismanaged cash flow, and I won't get into the details, but we shut the business down on 1 July 2022, and we took a monstrous amount of debt with us, because of course we had loans and we had credit cards that were personally guaranteed by myself and my wife. That it's only not even 2 years later, so we're still paying those off. Thankfully, with me being in the military, I have a little lower interest rates than some other people because I'm locked into something called the Service Member Civil Relief Act. But I can only imagine if I was paying 23 or 24% like some other folks, I would probably never pay these off. But yeah, when I watched that video, Mark, it really resonated with me. And, I obviously spent 20 years in the Marine Corps. I obviously have a desire to want to help people. I can't really push myself to get out of bed if I don't know I'm going to be doing that in some way, shape, or form. So I jumped on board. Said, this is I got to do this. I have to do this, and I'm very grateful and thankful for Cole and Jerry for allowing me to be a part of J.Galt, because I had to do a couple different interviews, and then I had to do a panel interview with all the executives, and they had to grill me with some questions, and they had to unanimously decide whether or not they would adopt me in the company. So I remember getting a phone call a day later. It was actually December 7th, and Earl called me, who's the chief marketing officer, and said, Shawn, it was unanimous. We'd love to have you. My wife was sitting next to me in the car, and I'm like, all right, well, I know what my next journey in life is going to be. This is going to be a challenge because most people don't know what business credit is. I would say well over 95% of small businesses are completely ignorant to it. Just there's no education out there about it. Same with me when we had a business, we were just completely ignorant to it. But I think I'm a glutton for punishment, Mark, because I spent 16 years on Marine Corps recruiting, and there is a ton of misconceptions about Marines that I have been educating people on for the last 16 years. So, hey, why not? Let's educate people on business credit. So, and fast forward about 3 months, and here we are, Mark.
Great story. And, I think people learn lessons the best when they go through something, but the next best thing is somebody saying, I went through it. Let me try to help you not go through it. So exactly right. What you're offering, I think, is the next best thing that anybody could.
That's exactly what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to just educate, really everybody that I can, but I'm really focused on Louisville, Kentucky, and just Kentucky in general, just trying to get out and shake hands and try and educate every business owner that I can on that this is real and this exists, and you can truly untether yourself from the business. So you can, like Jerry said earlier, you can put your head on the pillow every night and not have to worry about, your home, your cars, your kids' college fund, the money you have sitting in the stock market or whatever. Anything being at stake, which is incredibly important to me, because peace of mind is to me, is priceless. So.
Very good. Thank you. So talk to me about any other services that you guys, or niches that you guys fill, and just educate me a little more. Or if they're not major silos of what you do, tell me some other misconceptions that business owners have, ignorances that small business owners have, that you find in your work with them.
Sure. Appreciate that question. I think one of the big things we do now is, like I said, J.Galt's really, we're on a crusade to rescue small business owners across the United States. It's a tough road, as you know, Mark, right? To be an entrepreneur, no one schools you. You go to college, you can get accounting degrees, you can get business degrees, but no one really teaches you the ins and outs. Most of us worked in retail environments or for corporations and really didn't get the education to do that unless you worked for a farmer. But when you did that, it was just hourly help, right? So you really didn't understand it in your youth. So when you look at how do you run it, do you understand cash flow? But the big thing that really perplexes me with business owners when we talk to them, right? It's very rewarding. It's always a pleasure and honor for me to meet every single business owner, because 90% of the businesses across the United States are small and medium sized. It's not the big corporations that we think it is. And those are the guys and gals that fuel our local economies. They hire people, they give back to the community. So, I'm very passionate about saving one community at a time. And then, bigger factor is when you gets tough and you get down on your knees, it's a pride thing. I mean, we're saving marriages, we're saving drug and alcohol abuse, and and I hate to say it, but suicides. When it gets tough, I read it every month, right? So we're pretty passionate about this. When we say we're relationship and education focused, we're really out there networking with CPAs, accounting firms, and making sure everybody understands what's available to them and how to do it differently, besides what you heard from Shawn's story with him and his wife and his boutique, right? That's not cool to go out and run a business and put everything you got against it and then have to close the doors because of a technicality that him and his wife couldn't control, which was a pandemic, another storm, right? How do you survive that? And you got all this debt for what? Why did I do all that and invest all that money? And they didn't come out in the positive, right? So how do you prevent that? And I think understanding your business in how you filed it, I find it perplexing that 98% of small business owners don't understand cash flow or what their company's worth, except for what's in their mind and what's in their heart. Okay. And what I mean by that is, and the reason why they don't, because it's extensive and expensive, right? So we provide that valuable tool based on their industry, not just general business, in their industry. So a plumber, a consulting shop, whether it's a manufacturer, and then we run a business valuation. It's included in our service. So it gives them exactly what their company's worth. It gives them their key performance indicators, so they know where. They get the facts, not emotion, because we all think we know what it's worth. But you wouldn't plan for retirement 1 year or 5 years before you retired, would you, Mark?
No, of course not.
And most business owners, their business is a pretty big value in their portfolio. So how do you plan for your exit strategy when you don't know? We all know what our houses are worth. We all know what our cars are worth. We can get access to it, but business owners just don't understand it. And those evaluations can cost 10 grand or more. So we provide that value for the owners so they understand how to protect it, where to spend their time, money, and resources, and they understand the value and where to invest their time and money so they can continue to grow it and understand and plan for their exit strategy, whether it's passing it as a legacy to their children or loved ones, or whether it's selling it or when to restructure it. So I think that's another big part of this mystery. It's not just about understanding cash flow and getting access to it. What do you have? Where do you spend your time and money? And then what is it worth? So I know how to plan for my exit strategy properly. And I think if you look at those components, those are very valuable pillars to build a successful company and make sure that you understand it, so you have the clear facts of where you're at and where you're headed.
Do you guys have relationships with the local small business development corporations, SBA, SCORE? Because that seems like it could be a good middle entity that could steer people towards you guys, or at least, I'm even thinking about, and it's not popular these days, legislation that might mandate a session with someone who, if they're not in your role, they at least have this message. Hey, there is a way to fund your business. It may take you a little time, but there's a way to fund your business without personal guarantees. And beware. I know that's two parts of the question. Do you work with some of these government agencies to educate them so they can educate their clients? And do you think any sort of legislation that would protect small business owners, it might be too big brother for this era right now because the wind's not blowing that way. But what are your thoughts about something like that? That would be like
that was a big thought and a big question with a lot of components there, Mark. But I will tell you that SCORE, I love them. I love what they do. We're paired up with them nationally on lots of levels in the markets because we have over 300 consulting partners across the USA. So we're not just you heard him say Louisville and Indianapolis and Alpharetta. That's just where we're at and where we're headquartered. We have a team of professionals across the country that are there to serve and educate the business owners. Okay. And I know you have a broad podcaster that reaches many, right? So just letting you know, we've got someone wherever you're at to help you. SCORE is a big part of it. The SBDC, we started partnering with them and learning what they're doing and more in the government stuff and really helping that nuanced business owner, the minority business owners and things. Really, how do you get started and how do you get the capital, especially if you come over here and you don't have a social security number, you haven't had it very long, well, that's not going to help you at all. You can't even get started. So building EIN credit gets you that, because it doesn't matter. If you had a 400 or 500 credit score, it doesn't matter. Your credit score doesn't matter to build corporate capital, right? It's number two. Working with the government, like the state of Texas, we've just entered into having several meetings. I don't know if you've ever tried to contact any state government. It's like, it's you can't get in, right? So, but the state of Texas, we've actually got a partnership where we're going to do educational workshops, and then actually they have 6 small business association groups in the state of Texas, because they're the Republic of Texas. They're a large state. So we are looking to do that, to give the benefits and to connect with them so we can educate business owners, because when they go in and apply for those SBA loans, I can tell you right now that only 50% of them are getting the loans. That's a problem, right? So we're educating them to do things different, because there's a FICO score for getting SBA loans. It's your personal credit and your business credit score that allows you to get the money and the rates that you need. So they like what we do, and that's a huge important part for the local state governments to be able to give out those government loans to the SBA, and we're starting to build relationships with them as we speak. So great question.
So what about the last part? What about some legislation that would mandate, it's not quite an ombudsman, but maybe a similar role that says, hey, wait just a minute.
Yeah.
We are mandated to give you this information as a disclaimer. There are ways to get this money, blah, blah, blah. What about that? And do you ever see the political climate supporting something like that?
So another great question. I think that's in the plans, but to get that done is not easy when you're dealing with Congress and some of the government legislation to get that job done for the business owner. We really believe there's a war against the small business owner, right? An unfair advantage. That's why J.Galt is here. We're working hard to work with the business credit bureaus, because it's unfair. Consumer credit bureaus, there's a lot more protection for you on the consumer. There's not that protection on the business owner, right? So except for if you're Wall Street, right? They have a lot of money and a lot of power. So we're working with that, but it's a slippery slope and be able to give a definitive answer of what those plans are. I really wouldn't discuss those on an open forum like this, but just know that we know there's a war. We know that there's unfair advantages, and we're here to level the playing field on what J.Galt services do. But we are working and have orders with the business credit bureaus and trying to connect with legislation to see if this can actually be not mandated, but be something that when you sign up to get your LLC, that it's part of the program to have the education and learn and know it's available. And this is how you get it done, because that's not currently the way it's done today.
Mm-hmm. How big is this industry that you're in? Are there many competitors out there? And do you have an association, a broad industry association that lobbies for you and guides the industry?
So great question. Our company format and platform has been around since 2007, and we know what we're doing because we've served over 50,000 small business owners. Okay, and we've got them access to over $1.8 billion in capital and credit without personal guarantees. But as far as associations, we're partnered up with a lot of associations, whether franchise groups, trucking industry. So we're an association and conversation. We do a lot of road shows, expos to educate the small business owner. But as far as having a backing or that's what we do as a corporation. As you know, this is a capital environment with the companies in the United States. But as far as what we do, we're working and we're making waves. But nobody does what J.Galt does. There's people that help out with Cashflow. There's people that do business valuations. There's a couple of companies that say that they can help you with credit, but they don't understand the pathway and how to get there. And they're mostly financial brokerage houses. So beware of those, because they'll tell you that all you got to do is get a DUNS number and get a business credit card, and that's could be further from the truth. There's more to it. It's not that hard to do, but there are a secret set of rules that you have to do intentionally in the right order, or you just won't be successful to build your company's credit on that EIN. So we're working on all different vehicles in every state, legislation, and it obviously starts with the state governments because, as you know, funding and things are done by state. There's a SBA group that's done through the federal government, but that's still regulated and managed by the state of each state that's given by the government. So it's just a state by state thing that we're working on. So great question. We're making headway and progress. As you know, Cole and I started this company about 4 years ago. So as you know, it takes time to work on those things, but we're making some pretty big inroads and splashes, but there's not a lot. We're more in a blue ocean than a red ocean, like counting and CPAs. There's over 46,000 across the country. There's only a few of us around the country that do what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. My biggest client group is in the franchise industry, and I just came back from a franchise conference. How do I could see how they might soft pedal somebody, a franchise consultant, for example, how they might soft pedal this information or not give it at all because they don't want to wreck their deal of selling a franchise. And as you said, the SBA loans are going to require a signature. Does that mean that the people that get the SBA loans will be personally liable for it?
Yes. Anytime a bank takes money out of their vault and puts it into your checking account, those are always going to be personally guaranteed. And you're like, why? Because SBA loans, anytime you take cash, because if not, you and I, Mark, could start a nonprofit, borrow $2 million, pay all of our family members, and file bankruptcies. Well, you can't do that to the government or the banks at all because that would put them out of business. So there are some things when you're taking direct cash, but unsecured cards, unsecured lines of credit, vehicles, property, and things like that, the normal things that we use to operate our business, all of those can be done without personal guarantees. But SBA loans and cash loans that you're taking money out of a vault, those things are always going to require a personal guarantee. But when you can get access to SBA loans at those rates, and then 80% is on the government, 10% is on the bank, and you have 10% to invest in it, that's a really good loan to get, but it's not easy to get, and you've got to build a good EIN credit score and a personal credit score if you even have a chance to get it.
Okay.
Okay.
So we're coming up on our end of our time together. Is there anything that I haven't asked? And I've dug around pretty deep, but anything that I haven't asked that you would like to offer in terms of information?
Well, I can just tell you that we're just, like I said, we're relationship focused. We're an open door company. We're consulting. We're not here to do something to a business owner. We're here to do something for them. We're not a fit for everyone, but we have a free consultation meeting. If you've never seen your company's credit report in the last 6 months or ever, you should really take a look at that and understand that. We have a YouTube channel where you can check out a lot of things that we do. We have our website, which is, www.jgalt.io. Okay. Shawn's website would have a / and S King there for you, all those folks in Louisville or in the state of Kentucky. So if you want to do that, you can always schedule time with one of our consultants. They care, they listen. We're like the doctors of business credit. We're going to want to get to know your business. You're going to know how you got into it, where you're at, and then what's your plan for the next 2 to 3 years to see if our solutions and actually truly building EIN credit would even be beneficial to have you solve challenges or to have you achieve your goals. And that's what we do. So all I would say is we're open. We're here to give you education. We're not here to sell you anything. We're here really on a crusade to give you the unfair advantage so you can cash flow just like those big companies that you can't figure out how they're doing it. We're going to share the same secret sauce that they use, and now you'll have that advantage if it makes sense for your business. So that's all I'd like to share as we close out my piece of this podcast with you, Mark. So I really appreciate you having me on, and I know I'll leave any closing comments for Shawn to give as well.
Well, and before we do that, spell out Galt, spell out the website for us again, because I think some people might confuse that.
Yep.
And then give your email address in case any of our listeners are in the Indianapolis area.
Yes.
And we'll do the same for Shawn.
All right. Very good. It's JGALT.io. So J.Galt.io. JGALT.io. And then my email is Jerry, Jerry, at jgalt.io.
Got it. Shawn.
Yes, sir. I don't really have any closing comments. I don't want to follow Jerry. I mean, he pretty much summed everything up. I think you asked some really deep questions. I'm glad I had the president on this call. I think, I'm fairly new in this game, Mark, so I think you may have stumped me on a few things. I certainly wouldn't have been able to give the intellectual answers that Jerry did. But I will leave the listeners my email. It is sking, SKING. I'm not cool enough to just have my first name before it, but it's SKING at jgalt.io, JGALT.io. And I'll just add that I'll just add what I like the most about this company, Mark, is we're a family and everybody's genuine. I've never been a part of a corporation or an institution that is genuinely concerned with small businesses and just want to help them. Just want nothing less than to help them succeed. And that's I'm very proud to be a part of this company, and I'd say that's you can't find that everywhere. Okay, you know that.
Well, good luck to you in your new endeavor. Thank you for your previous service, and thanks in advance for the new service that you'll be providing. And I'll give you one quip that might help, is that nobody blames an egg for not being a chicken. So we all are where we are. We get started somehow, sometime. Well, it's been a pleasure meeting you guys and hearing about what you do. I'll keep it in mind for referrals and connections. I have some SBDC connections in the Tampa Bay area and some other areas. And as you see, my wheels are turning about how to get this information to more people. And that's probably 90% of your task ahead, is just educating people and letting them know. And then they see the benefit of getting consulting from your company to get to that point, but they have to know it first. So thanks so much, guys, for being with us. And let me just wrap up and do a little housekeeping stuff here. To learn more about J.Galt, please see the show notes, and we'll put Jerry and Shawn's contact information down below. So thanks, Jerry and Shawn, for being on the show with me today. To learn more about J.Galt, please see in the show notes below their contact information and website. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please like and subscribe and click the notification bell to make sure that you catch our next episode. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on the OutMarket.Pro podcast. Thanks again, Jerry and Shawn.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you so much for having us. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for having us, Mark. Thank you.